Chapter 67. A genius in 1 second remembers love go away? This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. Luonan stared fixedly at the burning wraith within the elevator. The latter's attention shifted over accordingly. This was a sort of eye-to-eye contact. 6 bewitching flames lit up on the head of the burning wraith. They were 2 parallel rows, truly resembling the eyes of a spider. The color of each eye was different. They were divided into 6 colors: dusky yellow, dark red, light gray, ghostly green, deathly white, and jet black. Each dot was extremely small, but the color of each dot swayed back and forth. It was bewitching and strange, making one dizzy. Luonan looked over, and many muddy and chaotic thoughts arose from the bottom of his heart. His entire mood swelled with irritation. He wished he could smash something to vent his emotions. Fortunately, the heavily chained crow trembled as its vibrating sound swept over, suppressing these inexplicable emotions and distracting thoughts. The demonic eyes of the burning wraith flickered and changed, clearly noticing Luonan's heavily chained crow. Of course, there was also the wraith sign that flickered at the very front. In Luonan's eyes, its first action was to assume a pouncing posture. This was no different from the reaction of its kind in the school's medical department this morning. Luonan also assumed a defensive posture, preparing to give it a painful head-on attack. However, this burning wraith didn't actually pounce over. On the contrary, it even retreated a bit to increase the distance between it and Luonan. Its blurry face slightly tilted upwards, and it let out a shriek that was hard for ordinary people to hear. But it surged on the mental plane. Luonan's heart jumped. He practically instantly thought of the fearful roar from yesterday on the warship. He didn't have time to think too much. The heavily chained crow hummed as it broke through the air, striking directly at the burning wraith. But the enormous wave of the mental attack came even faster. When the heavily chained crow touched the burning wraith, Chen Xiaolin behind him had already let out a shriek. Her emotions of fear burst forth, and her entire body crashed into the inner wall of the elevator. She wanted to find a way to escape, but she simply didn't have any opportunity to do so. Her entire body stiffened, and her eyes slightly bulged out from fear. A dark red bloody light soared from her body, shooting straight at the burning wraith. She instantly became dispirited and fainted as the bloody light broke out from her body. Luonan was truly unable to obstruct this sort of incorporeal method. He himself needed to rely on the suppression of the heavily chained crow in order to stabilize his mind and his surging blood and energy. And the chains that traversed through the air seemed to have been affected by the main body. They lost their previously all-conquering strength and stopped outside the burning wraith, trembling. At that moment, the effect of fear roar was far from over. In the elevator, the black-suited male, who was obviously under the control of the burning wraith, let out a short roar and once again pounced towards Shuelei. Shuelei was obviously affected by Chen Xiaolin's scream. His body trembled, causing him to lose the initiative. However, he did not show any signs of weakness. He mustered all his remaining strength, and with a low roar, he pushed forward. Both sides once again clashed head-on, and this time, Shuelei only took half a step back. He took a punch, and at the same time he returned an elbow. For the time being, he did not seem to be at a disadvantage. But Luonan wasn't happy. This was because he could already see that the intense combat and the surging emotions were the best catalysts. It caused the blood and energy of the two to transform into a long line of bloody light, endlessly pouring into the burning wraith in the air. Such a method of drawing blood and sucking marrow was more than 10 times more tyrannical than the spore environment of the simmering over a small fire from before. The burning wraith's ability to interfere with reality had already exceeded his imagination. Luonan suspected that if he continued to suck like this incorporeal wraith, which only existed on the mental plane, would be able to completely materialize from incorporeal and appear on the material plane. And what made him most vigilant was the opponent's calm attitude. The burning wraith had actually controlled its devouring instincts. It did not directly pounce forward, but instead increased its own strength to the greatest limit to increase its chances of victory. This could already be called an intelligent judgment. Sure enough, the name given by Quantum Corporation, human-faced arachnid, was the most appropriate name for this monster that was endlessly approaching a complete body. This was a savage and cunning hunter. It used every method to weaken its prey and strengthen itself. It was really hard to imagine just what kind of power its complete body would have. Luonan knew that the situation was becoming more and more unfavorable. With the support of Shuelei and the black-suited male, the power that the human-faced arachnid was able to grasp was rising with the tide. Luonan's heavily chained crow continued to attempt to penetrate through the incorporeal body of the arachnid. The wraith sign at the front was also doing its utmost to devour all the energy it could reach. But there was always a faint layer between them. After a few penetrations and disturbances, the core of the human-faced arachnid remained majestically motionless. Moreover, it continued to strengthen endlessly. Right now, the human-faced arachnid's main focus was still on strengthening its body. Once this strengthening came to an end, Luonan really didn't know what kind of terrifying attack would come next. As for Luonan himself, it seemed that he had reached his limit. These sorts of chaotic thoughts merely flashed before they were completely dispelled. Actually, there was still one more move. Luonan no longer looked at the human-faced arachnid. Instead, he closed his eyes and forced himself to enter the fixed space. Thanks to these past 2 days of difficult tempering, Luonan's mental state had made considerable progress. The visualization diagram of the tetrahedron, the inscribed sphere, and the outer-scribed sphere appeared in the void in the blink of an eye. The heavily chained crow pulled out from the central region of the human-faced arachnid. It extended outward segment by segment in an attempt to penetrate deeper into the human-faced arachnid. But no matter what, it was separated by a layer. It was far from reaching the destructive might it had when it first subdued the burning wraith. Before, Luonan believed that it was because the human-faced arachnid was excessively powerful. But now he had other thoughts. Perhaps the problem lay with him. What state was he in when the heavily chained crow displayed its greatest power? There was only one answer: the out-of-body state. The feeling of being transparent and clear, which disregarded all material objects, had disappeared ever since he returned to the out-of-body state. Luonan didn't understand the reasoning behind it, but the threat was right in front of him. He didn't have the time to ponder over it. Even if he treated a dead horse as a living one, he still had to go. The out-of-body state was an unfamiliar experience for Luonan. At first, he was struck by the siege hammer of the burning wraith. Then he was pulled by the heavily chained crow, forcing him into an out-of-body state. Now he had to take the initiative and continue his train of thought from back then. He transmitted the relevant thoughts through the heavily chained crow to the wraith sign. A marvelous vibration was transmitted back, instantly washing over his entire body. This time, Luonan's senses were even clearer. He clearly touched upon an incorporeal membrane. Originally, he didn't have the strength to break it, but under the pull of an external force, the internal and external attacks intersected. A hole instantly split open in this membrane. He immediately lost his bindings and floated up. Luonan's eyes were still closed, but his senses on the mental plane were completely opened. And at this moment, he met the peerlessly bizarre gaze of the human-faced arachnid. In the state of a soul body, the rattling sound of the heavily chained crow's trembling seemed to be even more fine and clear. It was precisely this subtle change that made Luonan instantly understand that his judgment was correct. The previous barrier wasn't because of any other reason. The most important reason just happened to come from his fleshly body. He definitely had to carefully study this problem later. In front of him, the human-faced arachnid's 6 eyes flickered. It was a bit eager to make a move. Perhaps it felt that it had accumulated enough superiority? Or perhaps Luonan in the out-of-body state looked more delicious and easier to bully. Luonan abandoned his final stray thoughts and looked straight at the human-faced arachnid without fear. Let's try again. The battle was on the verge of breaking out. But in this instant, the elevator's safety skylight collapsed with a rumble. A human figure flew down and smashed right into the head of the black-suited male, who had just crossed the middle of the elevator. Chapter 68. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. By right. The black-suited man's reaction was considered fast. Even when he was fighting with Shuelei, he still managed to twist his body to dodge. The problem was that the elevator compartment was only so big. Shuelei had to use a small portion of the compartment in order to protect Luo Nan and Chen Xiaolin, who were behind him. The space left for the black clothes was very little. In the end, he still had to use his arms to block. With a bang, the metal plate smashed onto the shoulder of the black suit. The predicted huge force had completely disappeared. The light metal plate was directly deformed. He had exerted force at the last moment, and had even used the wrong amount of force. No matter how fierce the black suit was, he could not help but fall into a state of paralysis. Seeing the opportunity, Shuelei threw a punch without caring about anything else. However, his vision blurred again. He seemed to see a figure behind the black-suited man. Then there was the crisp sound of bones breaking. The black-suited man twisted his body and came crashing over. This time, Shuelei had misjudged the distance. He instinctively turned his fist into a palm, wanting to push the black-suited man away. However, he had suddenly cut in between him and the black-suited man by lowering his body. It just so happened that Shuelei's arm was pushed outwards, leaving him wide open. His opponent's palm went up and struck his chin, sending a tremor into his brain. Shuelei's body stiffened. No matter how hard he tried, he was unable to control his body. Just as he was struggling, the side of his neck was struck by another chop. This time he could not hold on any longer. His eyes rolled back and he fainted. In the blink of an eye, both sides in the life and death combat had fallen. They had both lost consciousness, and the blood and chi channels that were channeled to the human-faced arachnid had been severed. Although it was crude, it was a good method to take drastic measures. Luo Nan's mind shook. He immediately knew that reinforcements had arrived. The human-faced arachnid was endlessly enraged. Its 6 monstrous eyes suddenly lit up as it peered at the newcomer. The ripples on the mental plane condensed to the point of materialization and came crashing down. It was none other than the siege hammer. Luo Nan cried out in his mind. He tried to use the heavily chained crow to interfere with the human-faced arachnid, but the chained crow did indeed display a state that was vastly different from when it was in the out-of-body state. The chained crow pierced deeper, seeming to be about to touch the core of the human-faced arachnid. However, it was hard for the chained crow to display its immediate effects. It was at this moment that the red light in the elevator box exploded. Luo Nan had the urge to squint his eyes. This was the reaction of a soul body, because right in front of them, the newly arrived reinforcements seemed to be bursting with a layer of raging flames. The blazing flames illuminated the interior and exterior. The siege hammer, aimed directly at the soul level, extinguished more than half of the raging flames. But in the end, it still didn't completely break through. On the contrary, the flames rose again after a slight setback, even exploding with an even more violent momentum than before, completely annihilating the impact on the mental level. Then, the flames filled the entire elevator, and the momentum was unparalleled. Format of fire. Luo Nan's mind couldn't help but be shaken, but he soon discovered that something was wrong. His soul body was swept by the light of the flames, and the pain he felt yesterday when he left his body reappeared. It was as if he was being cut by a knife. However, the coldness that froze his soul completely transformed into a scorching heat. So it didn't differentiate between friend and foe. Luo Nan saw that the situation was far from good. All thoughts of fighting a great battle after leaving his body were wiped away. Though he did not directly return to his body, he took a step back and hid behind his main body. He relied on the aura of his main body to block this wave of unexpected disaster. At the same time, a light whistle rang out from the elevator. The ice-cold blade light streaked across the sky, forming a clear contrast with the raging flames within the elevator. Yet it also miraculously blended together. The raging flames controlled the cold blade, and the glaring trajectory branded itself onto Luo Nan's mental plane. It didn't disperse for a long time. Love Gope Small say Neka, this blade looked very familiar. The human-faced arachnid was already in discomfort from being burned by the format of fire, and it was even more wary when facing the blade light. It instinctively wanted to dodge. But at this time, the heavily chained crow finally displayed its use after a period of adaptation. The chain suddenly snapped straight, and the chained body that was already pointing straight at the core of the human-faced arachnid radiated a myriad of fine threads. Though it lacked a bit of irresistible momentum, no matter what the human-faced arachnid wanted to do right now, it was able to carry out some interference and suppression. It was enough for the human-faced arachnid to slow down by a bit. The blade light tore through the air, and instantly tore a wound through the body of the human-faced arachnid's phantom. Everything it passed through turned into nothingness. The human-faced arachnid hissed once more, but this time it was a miserable shriek. Before the shriek had even finished, the demonic body, that was about to condense into substance, actually exploded with a rumble. It transformed into countless dim rays of light that penetrated through the elevator box and dispersed in all directions. There was still this move. Luo Nan was greatly surprised. He could feel that the human-faced arachnid hadn't received any fatal injuries. The only reason it had disintegrated was for the sake of fleeing for its life. Who would believe this sort of judgment without a certain amount of intelligence? The heavily chained crow withdrew. With the wraith sign at the front, he felt that the human-faced arachnid had instantly disintegrated into chaos. He felt that the wraith sign had torn off a piece and devoured it in an instant. Luo Nan didn't carefully experience it, but he didn't want to delay any longer. His soul body threw itself into his body, returning to his body, and he opened his eyes. From his angle, he just happened to see the swift and fierce blade light return. In the end, it seemed to shrink back into the sleeve. Only the heavens knew that with such a close-fitting cut, there was no space to hide the blade's edge. Luo Nan couldn't help but size up the figure in detail. This figure looked a bit familiar. This is... Luo Nan opened his mouth to speak, but a wave of dizziness suddenly assaulted him. His body leaned back, pressing against the inner wall of the elevator. The ice-cold metal surface was soon heated up by his body temperature. Sure enough, the out-of-body technique was a very dangerous move. The consumption was enormous. The soul body had to bear a portion of the attack, and the fleshly body had to bear the brunt of it in the end. Speaking of which, he hadn't even eaten dinner today. He was already very hungry, but right now this feeling of being very full. What was going on? Luo Nan slowly inhaled and exhaled in an attempt to alleviate the endlessly increasing feeling of bloating. But it was useless. The feeling of being stuffed came from the mental plane. It was like the wraith sign had taken a bite and forgot to measure how big its stomach was. It had been stuffed by the human-faced arachnid's gift. The piece torn from the body of the human-faced arachnid didn't just contain pure energy. It also contained an enormous amount of information. The heavily chained crow possessed a certain analytical ability, but it wasn't able to operate properly when faced with such an enormous amount of chaotic information. Clearly, this information exceeded the limits of Luo Nan's understanding. What to do? Oh, perhaps it's possible. Luo Nan's mind stirred, and the external neuron buried within the flexible e-ink screen reacted. It connected with the heavily chained crow in an instant. It was as if a floodgate had been opened. Luo Nan didn't care if this enormous amount of information was useful or not. He stuffed it all in. His thoughts were very simple. Both input and reverse output were input. The external neuron was able to control multiple system modules in the laboratory at the same time. It could suppress the enormous amount of information within the supercomputer. It shouldn't be a problem to deal with the excess information on the body of the human-faced arachnid. Reality proved that his judgment was correct. The external neuron really did consume as much information as it could, without any adverse reactions. The resolution of his mental senses was limited. Luo Nan didn't know how the external neuron operated in the end. He wanted to open the flexible screen and take a look. A hand reached out in front of him at this time. Chapter 69. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go? This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. The hand that was extended in front of him was slender and spotlessly white. The cold and hard contours of the joints revealed a different meaning. Luonan raised his head, and a familiar face entered his eyes. It looked excessively cold and indifferent. It was hard to deal with. There was also the suit and trousers. There was a considerable contradiction with the memories of a dozen seconds ago, where the blade light had crisscrossed. "You are He Yuan, your temporary secretary." "I'm very sorry, Mr. Luo. I came late." Right, her surname was also He. Luonan finally confirmed. Wasn't this the white-collared woman he met in the hotel lobby before? She was the one who made Chun Weikan of the Mutual Assistance Society call her sister He. He had even been this person's doorman. But today, this sister He had become his secretary. There seemed to be quite a large difference between the rules of the world of normal people and the world of ability users. It seemed to be more advantageous to him. He Yuan's eyes drooped slightly at this time. Her temperament was a bit different from the cold and proud face in his memories. Only now did Luonan realize that this person's gaze was far too fierce. When she intentionally or unintentionally concealed this characteristic, the impression she left behind was a thin and quiet person. Of course, she was also extremely beautiful. It really was good to have a secretary like this. A tiny sprout of vanity sprouted in his mind, but it was immediately uprooted. Luonan didn't forget Zhang Yingying's introduction of the situation. This was probably the special period of the human-faced arachnid's rampage. This was the embodiment of the value of psychics. If he really took this for granted, he would probably be sent to the Wilderness Explorers Society's joke wall. He would be forever remembered. All sorts of thoughts flashed through his mind in an instant. He Yuan's hand was still placed in front of him. Luonan's mind spun a bit before he reacted. He reached out and clasped her hand. When he truly touched her hand, he felt that He Yuan's hand was indeed as cold and hard as it appeared. Many of her fingertips and joints were covered in calluses. In comparison, Luonan's own palm was like that of a young master, who had never experienced the baptism of wind and frost. It was a bit too soft. He Yuan exerted a bit of force, and brought the half-leaning, half-falling Luonan up. She pulled her hand out, but she still supported him. It was as if she was afraid that Luonan would fall again. Actually, Luonan really wanted to tell her that he was just a bit hungry and a bit full. His body was fine. But when he thought about it again, he felt that this statement was no different from a lunatic. He changed the direction of his words and pointed at the unconscious Shuelei. "Is he okay?" "This is my friend. He saved me just now." Luonan was really worried that He Yuan would treat Shuelei as an enemy and dispose of him. "She's just temporarily unconscious. She'll wake up when her qi and blood rush through the bottleneck. But the other lady is a bit more troublesome. She may need to be hospitalized for observation, and a psychiatrist will be arranged. Wait a moment." As He Yuan finished speaking, she lightly pressed her ear. She should be communicating with someone through the hexa ear. Luonan didn't feel that he was being left out. He took this opportunity to continue sizing up and evaluating his secretary. He Yuan's eyebrows were locked by habit when she conversed with others. It should be said that Luonan had never seen her truly smile and relax. It was as if she was dissatisfied with everything, including herself. Perhaps it was because of this, coupled with her illustrious background, that she always gave people a great sense of oppression. Luonan wasn't a stranger to this feeling. He was normally like this as well. The experiment of restoring his grandfather's notebook had already consumed nearly all of his energy. The abstruse theories and extremely high operating standards made him constantly doubt whether or not everything he did was perfect. Whether or not he met the requirements, the pressure was always there. Naturally, it was hard for him to be happy. It was just that Luonan didn't have an illustrious background, so he couldn't form external oppression and the like. He could only appear more introverted and gloomy. Such a powerful woman lived under pressure all the time. This world was much more difficult than he imagined. Luonan shook his head as he inexplicably felt a bit emotional. He didn't know why he suddenly felt a bit melancholic. A second later, he discovered that the ground beneath his feet seemed to still be shaking. The elevator had already returned to its calm state, so the shaking could only come from the outside. He subconsciously asked, "Another earthquake?" "No. It's just a pointless venting after a failed operation. Wayne actually responded. She then pressed the elevator's floor button and selected the 81st floor. The elevator trembled slightly before returning to normal. It slowly started to ascend. Luonan reminded. Zhang Yingying is still on the 27th floor. She's already been called up. Luonan blinked his eyes. He was already unable to make sense of the society's arrangements and corresponding logic. Zhang Yingying, that unreliable woman, had said a few words that were filled with misleading information. And no matter how he looked at it, Wayne was much more serious than Zhang Yingying. Can you tell me what's going on right now? I remember that I only came here to participate in the entrance assessment. Wayne raised her head to look at him. Assessment. Luonan felt no pressure selling Zhang Yingying. I just submitted my application to join the society this morning. Then Zhang Yingying notified me to come here to participate in the assessment, and I've already passed. Then you guys told me that the dark side of life form, called the human-faced arachnid, is wreaking havoc right now. The society really needs psychics. They even gave me a secretary. There's nothing wrong with the above, right? Wayne frowned in response. You only learned about the human-faced arachnid when you arrived at the hotel? What's the specific content of the operation? Content? Luonan was stupefied. Then he discovered that he seemed to have sold out Zhang Yingying in an instant. Sold out well. Luonan had a whole new understanding of Zhang Yingying's degree of unreliability in an instant. Wayne shook her head. Even if I told you the content, it would be meaningless. It's a complete mess. Was she talking about the society? Right when Luonan was bewildered, Wayne sent him a message through the hexa ear. Please enter the encrypted channel. Adjust to war chess mode. Luonan moved according to her words, and the translucent interface of his visual membrane opened up once more. At this time, he discovered that 7 or 8 blood-red warnings had appeared in the encrypted wartime communication channel. They all came from Wayne, and the time was right before and after the incident. And Zhang Yingying had also sent out several messages over the normal communication channel. However, Luonan had been completely engrossed in the human-faced arachnid at the time. He actually didn't notice it at all. Wayne gave him a reminder at this time. Mr. Luo should pay attention to the Hexaear's information as much as possible. Our future communications should be conducted through it to ensure accuracy and efficiency. I'm okay, but I think I got disconnected just now. Wayne's eyebrows tightened a bit. It was my negligence. Mr. Luo may be able to realize the third level of communication, but in the end, you aren't an awakened. Once you enter a tense situation, it will be very hard to balance everything. I hope that Mr. Luo can take a certain amount of time to do emergency training to avoid a situation where your communications are disconnected. We can start tomorrow and plan out the time to proceed. Luonan didn't respond immediately because the structural diagram of the Limestone Water Village pub had already appeared on his retina. There was an eye-catching moving logo on it. Chapter 70. A Genius in 1 Second. Remember love? SpeakNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. The Limestone Water Village Hotel was not a standalone building. Even though it was 454 meters tall and had 108 floors, it could only exist as a secondary building to the entire Cloud City Water Village complex. Moreover, it was the one with the lowest height. There were a total of 6 buildings similar to the Limestone Water Village Hotel. They were distributed in a ring shape, rising one after the other. They surrounded the 1179-meter-tall main building of Cloud City, forming what could be called a first-rate complex of buildings in the entire world. Luonan saw a structural map that included the entirety of the Limestone Water Village Hotel, as well as a few passageways that led to the low-level business center. The mesh perspective map looked like a beehive, but it was 1,000 times more complex. The blue triangular flags, representing the Wilderness Explorers Society, were scattered within. It was as if they were rushing through a maze. Luonan blurted out when he saw this scene. There are too few people. The 108-floor Limestone Water Village Hotel was the most affordable and friendly building within the Cloud City Water Village complex. Naturally, its popularity was high. It was the weekend, and it was the peak of the night. There were at least a dozen banquets lined up. Adding in the tourists and travelers, 20 to 30,000 people wasn't too much. However, there were no more than 15 aptitude users scattered on each floor. On average, one person had to take care of 7 or 8 floors. In reality, there were a few groups of people, including the 2 of them in the elevator right now. In terms of coverage, it was simply riddled with holes. Luonan had always heard about operations and whatnot. He thought that the society would be mobilizing in large numbers in order to hunt and kill the human-faced arachnid, laying down an inescapable net. But when he saw this scene, he felt a bit embarrassed. At this time, he remembered a small detail. "I remember you brought 4 people with you, Sister He?" Luonan was too embarrassed to call her secretary He, so he learned from Chun Weikan. "That's the one with the 4 of them together." Luonan was already completely convinced. Wasn't chasing after the human-faced arachnid like finding a needle in a haystack with this kind of configuration? Yi Wayne suddenly asked him at this time. "Can we switch to conference mode?" Luonan believed that she had other plans, so he naturally had no reason to refuse. Soon, a notification flashed on his retina interface. The wartime encrypted communications had entered conference mode. A row of avatars appeared on the interface. All 15 members of the association in the Limestone Water Village pub were online. Zhang Yingying's squirrel was among them. He gave a warning and was ambushed by the Black Wolf behind him. Black Wolf? Luonan's gaze turned to the black-suited male on the ground. So this person had a code name? Speaking of which, this person was much more miserable than Shuelei. He Yuan's attack just now had directly smashed his spine. Luonan didn't know if he could be saved. But He Yuan's explanation immediately stunned Luonan. Black Wolf is a registered member of the society. He is also a member of this search and capture operation. However, right now he is already a slave of the human-faced arachnid. He Yuan's tone was tranquil. She didn't have any other emotions because of the change in her companion's position. But the conference channel was a sheet of silence. Clearly, this fact made the others rather embarrassed. He Yuan's analysis continued at this time. We haven't found the scene of Black Wolf being infected. But according to the time of the last call, it was approximately 20 minutes ago. Then the infected Black Wolf approached the next target. From the state of his target, we have reason to believe that he has already used his methods. He has been tailing them all the way, waiting for an opportunity to reap the fruits of battle. The human-faced arachnid's methods are crude and intense. There is practically no buffer time in between. And right now we still don't know anything. Only He Yuan's voice remained in the conference channel for the time being. Only when Mr. Luo captured the traces of the human-faced arachnid and issued a warning to his friend did we begin to move. The first wave was Zhang Yingying, who was by Mr. Luo's side. The elevator just happened to arrive at the 81st floor with a ding. There were no disturbances in between. Presumably, it was the result of special control. Luonan was startled when the elevator door opened. On the opposite wall was a beautiful woman with drooping shoulders against the wall. Wasn't that Zhang Yingying? This young woman, who had always radiated with vitality, was clearly receiving information from the conference channel. She had a premonition of the unpleasant evaluation that would follow. She raised her hand weakly. "Hi, I'm here." She continued. Compared to the problems exposed during the operation, what I'm most unable to understand is still the arrangement of the plan beforehand. I didn't receive the notification from the association until half an hour before the operation. There was no mission briefing either. As a secretary and a member of the security team, I only saw Mr. Luo's basic information after I arrived at the hotel. The key information was also vague. According to my understanding, Mr. Luo also didn't know anything about the operation team members. Spirit. Isol team. Team. Luo. Luo. Team. The members of the operation team fought by themselves. They didn't utilize the abilities of psychic beings at all to realize effective command. Moreover, they placed their focus on the infected, neglecting the human-faced arachnid's ability to move independently. This caused the mission to fail completely. These are some of the problems I've discovered during the operation. I-chun. I bet I not. From. I. From. Dong. But I hope everyone can seriously discuss and solve the problems that have been exposed and continue to be exposed. Otherwise, our pursuit of the human-faced arachnid will only lead to continuous failures, leading to unfathomable consequences. Love go little say netko over. Yuan's long analysis finally came to an end. No one spoke for a long time in the conference channel. No one responded to her proposal. The atmosphere was awkward. Luonan even thought that if Yuan's words hadn't softened a bit in the end, perhaps more people would have withdrawn like the black beetle. He could see that Yuan's strict and serious behavior was a bit out of tune with the society's overall atmosphere. Luonan thought back to Zhang Yingying's evaluation of ability users this morning. The evaluation of ability users such as arrogant, wild and unruly, eccentric and perverted, and so on. Now it seemed that they weren't particularly exaggerated. At the very least, the evaluation of scattered sand was absolutely realistic. Perhaps, this operation would come to an end without any progress? Unexpectedly, Zhang Yingying spoke through the conference channel. Everyone, we've lost face to this extent. Aren't we afraid of making a public appearance? Tactics are needed to fight a boss. We've really underestimated the enemy by swarming over like a swarm of bees. Let's talk things over together. Zhang Yingying's words were admittedly dispirited. She had the appearance of everyone come over for a farewell meal. But the effect was actually quite good. In the silent and stiff conference channel, there was a chaotic sound. Sure. Let's go up and discuss tactics. It's good to meet each other. Mr. Luo hasn't said anything yet. Has he been turned into a figurehead by the secretary? He's the vice president. Today's fortune is tomorrow's calamity. Mr. Luo really knows how to play it safe. I heard that he's still quite young. I haven't met the future vice president yet. This isn't a good start. Learning from the military's successful experience isn't bad. Speaking of which, does the vice president play the wilderness? The military has a team in the wilderness, right? The vice president should be an expert. What character does she usually use? Luonan was speechless. This was clearly a group of wilderness battle squads. They usually played the game 10 days in the wilderness and gathered together. He didn't know who called out to them, but they just rushed over to deal with the human-faced arachnid. They probably thought that this was the same as fighting a boss in a game? Yuan was expressionless towards this. She just sat quietly and waited. He looked at Zhang Yingying again. She was lying on the table after she finished speaking. She continued to act as if there was nothing left to live for. She felt Luonan's gaze and suddenly turned her head. Hey, draw another picture for me. Forget it. You don't understand anything. Zhang Yingying buried her head in the crook of her arms. She was in a position where no one could see her, and she became all the more depressed. She knew that Yuan was very impartial in her evaluation of this entire matter. But the more she was like this, the more she minded. All because of a single sentence. Her attack power was severely lacking. Ever since she entered the society, her white rainbow strike had received praise from the big shots of the society. She was known as the most explosive attack power on the awakened level. She had always been proud of this. But the truth was that she hadn't dealt enough damage to Black Wolf at all. If Black Wolf had used a heavy technique on Luonan back then it would be useless to say anything now. Zhang Yingying was a bit absent-minded, as she felt the clear and sharp energy flowing through her body. She inexplicably recalled Susan's words from this morning. White rainbow. Is it dull? This was the first time Zhang Yingying had this sort of thought in the past 2 years. It seemed to be a bit different from what her boss had said. Chapter 72. Genius in 1 second. Remember love go? Speak net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Zhang Yingying spoke of a portrait. Though it was without a head or tail, Luonan really did observe her. Frankly speaking, Zhang Yingying had indeed changed, and it was quite big. Her entire essence, energy, and soul had changed. If Luonan were to draw her now, he would absolutely not draw her as a person who seemed to be in a game at all times and possessed an intense desire for victory. The influence of her emotions was actually this big. Mr. Luo. He Wayne sent a message through the hexa ear. Please enter the encrypted communication project 001. Okay. Luonan followed the request and entered the project module that was established at the last minute. A simple interface had already been built inside. Luonan was unsure of the concrete contents, but he could see that it was related to him and the human-faced arachnid. Information was constantly being updated right now, changing at every moment. Was this a template that came with the hexa ear? Or was it He Wayne who built it herself? If it was the latter, then Luonan could only sigh in admiration at He Wayne's powerful control on the mental plane. Before the meeting, I hope to gather some information to use as a basis for decision-making. Mr. Luo, you don't mind, right? Luonan answered honestly. There are some things that I don't even know how to say. It's fine. It's fine as long as you can provide first-hand information. Back in the elevator, aside from your friend Shuele. Yes. Aside from Mr. Shue blocking the black wolf, you should have created some sort of restriction on the human-faced arachnid. Is that right? Luonan secretly rolled his eyes. How could the first question be so sharp? However, the heavily chained crow that was molded from his grandfather's formatting theory was an open and above-board achievement. Luonan didn't even have the time to publicize it. He didn't have any thoughts of keeping it to himself. What he needed to avoid was his relationship with the human-faced arachnid and his intuition as the trump card of a psychic. That was all. The problem right now was that he couldn't explain it in a short amount of time, so he could only express it rather regretfully. At the time, I felt that there was some sort of negative existence in the elevator, so I tried to use the chains to suppress it. Chains. Luonan was waiting for this question. He took a deep breath and expressed it as clearly as he could. This is a format constructed on the mental plane according to my grandfather's theory. Its function is to suppress the abnormal state of the body and mind. He Wayne said curiously. Constructing a format on the mental plane? Do you mean the prototype format of formatting theory? Luonan's impassioned mood was instantly doused in cold water. He really wanted to roar in response. Screw the archetype format. But he quickly recalled the source of He Yuan's strength in the elevator. Wasn't it the format of fire? Without a doubt, in the heart of a burner like her, Yen Hong's archetype formatting theory was the cornerstone of power. She wouldn't accept anything else. He actually wanted to seriously expound on his grandfather's theory. He was really stupid. Luonan's mood instantly turned gloomy. He didn't have the mood to explain further. He just said, I don't know what your professional terminology is, but the general meaning is like this. Love gobe small say netku. This theory seems very interesting. I hope to have a chance to discuss it with Mr. Luo. He Wayne was like an outstanding presenter. She would never easily deny the opinions of others, yet she always grasped the core theme. Can Mr. Luo describe the feeling of directly confronting the human-faced arachnid? For example, the performance of the human-faced arachnid's abilities? Luonan didn't respond immediately. He needed to sort out the relevant information and protect his own trump card. He needed a certain amount of time. He Wayne wasn't just a questioner and a listener. She felt Luonan's hesitation, and she first shared her own experience. Actually, yesterday I joined forces with my comrades to exterminate a human-faced arachnid clone. Today I encountered it again. The difference from yesterday's clone is quite clear. Yesterday? Where? Luonan was a bit surprised. Mr. Luo should know. It's the source of the human-faced arachnid incident, the research and development area. The military transport ship Lanshan. It's her. That blade light, there's no mistaking it. Luonan's loosened memory barrier opened up like this. He instantly connected the thin woman in front of him with the deep blue walker who had slain the burning wraith on the military transport ship yesterday. The feeling of that blade light was completely compatible. Yes, this was the slayer who had slain the burning wraith that he had subdued. Sure enough, this was a world piled up by coincidences. They could be considered to have a grudge between them. Luonan didn't really care, but the question he had been keeping in his stomach suddenly emerged. Sister, he can activate the format of fire without the deep blue armor? What Luonan really wanted to ask was, why do I feel that the strength you unleashed in the elevator is even stronger than when you're wearing the armor? Unfortunately, this kind of self-exposing question could only be kept in his stomach. He Yuan didn't find it strange that Luonan was certain that she was a deep blue walker. In this world, deep blue walkers and burners had a 1-2-2-1 relationship. The format of fire can already exist without the armor starting from the third generation of burners. After all, technology is constantly advancing. He Yuan didn't explain in depth. Instead, she went back to the original topic. Compared to the one we killed before, this human-faced arachnid clone's ability to interfere with reality has clearly increased. It can forcefully infect and control an awakened like the Black Wolf. It can also quickly extract its strength. If this happened on the ship, it would be very hard for us to successfully surround and kill it. Luonan used the Hexa-ear to flip through the society's information and combined it with his own personal experience. He didn't feel that there was anything hard to understand. It must have devoured many of its own kind. With 8 or 10 of them piling up together, its ability will naturally increase by a level. He Yuan responded. The hunt for the human-faced arachnid has just begun. Right now in the entire Xia city, not counting us, there are only 2 successful examples. There are 3 other failures. Even though there isn't any more detailed information, we can see from the briefing that the human-faced arachnid clone we're facing clearly has a strength that's a level higher. Forcefully infecting an awakened is the only case. I didn't mention it just now, but I feel that the most important problem lies in the judgment of intelligence. It is impossible to form an effective chain of information by relying solely on the strength of the society's psychics. In addition, Quantum Corporation is certainly still holding back. The military and the higher-ups of the society have already re-entered the R&D area to investigate the scene. I hope to find something new. The sound of a door rang out, interrupting their conversation. Ability users that were spread out on every floor arrived one after another. These people had all sorts of appearances, but they all had one thing in common. They were all quite curious about Luonan and He Yuan. Zhang Yingying also raised her head, forcing herself to help them introduce. Truthfully speaking, Luonan really didn't remember many of them. He only remembered that the black carapace beetle didn't come. It looked like they had truly fallen out. Chapter 73. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Sweat. I came back later than I expected. Everyone, please forgive me. Since they were all sitting together, He Yuan no longer conversed with Luonan alone. She began the meeting. He Yuan had already established her position in the society through her accomplishment of single-handedly repelling the human-faced arachnid's clone in the elevator. She had analyzed the previous problems. Of course, she had a faint military background. No one expressed any dissatisfaction with her presiding over the meeting, at least on the surface. As for Luonan, he was still in the stage where he was being observed. Gazes fell on his face, and all of them were straightforward playfulness and curiosity. There was no concealment whatsoever. Luonan was also observing them. If the operation continued, his safety would be greatly affected by these people. Of course, he couldn't be careless. He didn't remember it during the initial introduction, so he could only study it hard during the meeting. Luonan really admired his secretary when it came to this. It was only during their introductions that he learned that He Yuan had also just retired from the military. She had joined the Wilderness Explorers Association less than a day ago, and was a newcomer, just like him. But with the same experience, He Yuan could clearly remember the names and nicknames of all the participants. There was no hindrance in communicating during the meeting, and she also had a clear understanding of everyone's duty and movement within the hotel. This was not just a matter of memory, but also a matter of whether one was diligent or not. Speaking of meetings, the initial format was quite casual. He Yuan didn't walk down one topic after another. Instead, she followed the same pattern of communication she had with Luo Nan. She chatted and gathered information from all sides. Luo Nan didn't exit Project 001, so he could clearly see that the template's contents were being updated and adjusted at lightning speed. The blueprints of the Limestone Water Village pub also became more and more detailed. It could be seen that He Yuan was attempting to reverse engineer the movements of the human-faced arachnid. She wanted to see how it would make its move against the black wolf. However, she was unable to see the results at the moment. Luo Nan felt quite familiar with this sort of intuitive deduction method. Love Gobe Small Say Neki. He opened his notebook subconsciously. The flexible e-ink screen was still on the drawing interface. To him, the abstract and precise structure of the wraith sign was particularly eye-catching among the messy lines. The drawing interface stopped at the moment when he sensed the existence of the human-faced arachnid and worn Shuele. Luo Nan was a bit spellbound as he looked at the chaotic lines on the interface. What he could confirm was that he had not truly seen the human-faced arachnid in the instant he had drawn the wraith sign. What had stimulated him was an intense yet fuzzy feeling. It was similar to an incomparably mysterious intuition. Luo Nan was no stranger to this feeling. When he added his drawings, the self-portrait of the prison building, the sketch of the capture of Li Xueqing, they were all pieced together by the details of this intuitive inspiration. If he used Zhang Yingying's description of a shaman as a standard, this was the only ability he could rely on. Bang! Someone in the conference room slammed the table. Luo Nan was also alarmed. He originally thought that it was someone who was dissatisfied with He Yuan, but when he raised his head, he discovered that it was actually a group of ability users. They had inexplicably sunk into an argument. It seemed that some problems were triggered as the content of the conversation gradually deepened. In a peaceful state, everyone was smiling, and no difference could be seen. But at this time, almost everyone in the conference room had emotions, but they showed different faces. Some were anxious, some were angry, some were absent-minded, some were disappointed, and some were watching coldly from the sidelines. Luo Nan felt that this was quite interesting. He took out his digital pen, and the tip of the pen fell down, sketching on the flexible e-ink screen. The originally chaotic lines underwent a bit of embellishment, transforming into a muddy and turbulent river. The structure of the wraith sign was hidden within the tightly woven lines. Then he drew a few sketched fish within these lines. They were either undulating within the waves, leaping out of the water, or diving to the bottom of the river. Their postures and temperaments were all different. They symbolized certain people in the conference room. But there was one thing that was the same. Every fish was bobbing within the river, affected by the waves and the current. Luo Nan used this to symbolize complex emotions and willpower. Love Gobe Small Say Netka. Next, Luo Nan drew a small boat on the surface of the river. The chains and anchors hung down to symbolize himself. Perhaps he was originally a member of the people bobbing within the river, but because of the heavily chained crow, his position was anchored, and he was somewhat detached. As for He Yuan, her situation was similar to his. As a burner, she possessed the power of the format. She was like a reef in the water. As for the human-faced arachnid, it was a hunter hidden deep within the river. It used negative emotions as a primer, waiting for an opportunity to strike. It could permeate and exert influence on other people, but it could only meet force with force against Luo Nan and He Yuan. This was where his advantage lay. The tip of the pen reached this point, and a line of thought suddenly became clear in Luo Nan's mind. Picking Black Wolf to make a move shouldn't be a coincidence. How could the human-faced arachnid have the luck to randomly pick an awakened? Luo Nan thought about Shuele. He was also an excellent resource. His blood and energy were abundant. He was a top-notch tonic. Perhaps the human-faced arachnid had chosen every single person present. It had made contact with every single person, but no one had detected it. Yes, there was a specter like this. It had once floated above everyone's head, and then it had chosen the one it liked the most. It was also the most unlucky one. Just like now, the wraith sign hidden in the turbid river was connected to every fish through the lines that passed through it. Mr. Luo. Huh. What? Luo Nan woke up from his trance with a start and discovered that someone was greeting him. The one who spoke was a tall and skinny young man. His nickname should be Bamboo Pole. He always had a cheeky smile on his face. He looked like an optimist, but his words were very sharp. Mr. Luo's psychic ability, accuracy, and sharpness need not be mentioned. There have already been facts to verify it. Then what's the range of coverage? I heard President he say that we need to create tactics around psychics. Is it close combat, or is it long-range bombardment? We need to figure this out, right? Luo Nan smiled bitterly and looked at Zhang Yingying. She was the one who put the hat on him. She was the one who explained it. Zhang Yingying glared back, but she still opened her mouth. Luo Nan just joined the society. He doesn't understand anything. He needs to let old you appraise him and give him some pointers. He needs to have a basic concept. But Bamboo Pole was unforgiving. I heard that Mr. Luo's psychic ability is presented in drawings? I've seen you draw and draw all this time. Do you have any inspiration? Oh, not really. Of course Luo Nan wouldn't say that he was drawing a picture of them, and that he felt that they were all going to be swallowed up. Luo Nan discovered that he was being targeted in response. This group of ability users had enough of quarreling internally. They began to exert their strength externally. He Yuan wasn't easy to deal with, so they picked a soft persimmon like him to pinch. When all was said and done, it was because he wasn't convinced. I saw it all. The one who raised her hand and laughed was a woman nicknamed Cat Eyes. She was roughly 30 years old and had a hot figure. She wore heavy makeup and looked like a bar dancer. Luo Nan had a deep impression of her because her ability was long-range perception. It was already very similar to a psychic, but it wasn't effective against darksider life forms. She played the role of a scout in the team. Now Luo Nan had seen it for himself. Separated by the conference table, he was at least 7 to 8 meters away from Cat Eyes. She could even see it. There were already people jeering at this time. Kitty, what did he draw? It's fine if Mr. Luo's face is tender. We can do it ourselves. Yeah, this is the first time I've seen this type. Kitty, you interpret it for us. Cat Eyes was the type who wished for the world to be in chaos. She didn't care about Luo Nan's expression and giggled as she opened her mouth to describe. This drawing has a very messy appearance. It's like a river. There are boats and reefs on the river. There are small fish swimming below. And then, Luo Nan was a bit helpless against this sort of noisy character. He wanted to put away the digital pen, but the pen tip sank a bit. It was as if an invisible thread had wrapped around it. There was a sudden reaction on the mental plane. The chains rattled and trembled. The wraith sign at the front also seemed to flicker with light. Luo Nan subconsciously moved his pen, and a marvelous feeling appeared. It was as if he had brought something with him. Cat Eyes, who had been giggling, suddenly went mute at this moment. Blood seeped out from the corner of her eyes and she fell backwards. Chapter 74. A Genius in 1 Second Remembers Love? Speak. Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The chairs in the conference room were quite stable. Cat Eyes bumped into the back of the chair, causing it to sway slightly and push her body forward. Her entire body was as soft as a noodle. Clearly, she had completely lost consciousness. She swayed a few more times before finally falling forward. Her forehead bumped into the conference table with a muffled sound. She did not react at all. The tip of the pen in Luo Nan's hand suddenly stopped. Aside from Cat Eyes' strange reaction, countless blurry and chaotic scenes suddenly exploded before his eyes. There were even more peculiar sounds, smells, and other signals. They surged over one after another. This was absolutely not the stimulation of his senses from the external environment. Instead, it was information signals that were directly transferred to his nervous system. There was no logic behind it. There was no distinction between primary and secondary. They just swarmed over like a swarm of bees. Luo Nan was already extremely familiar with how to deal with this enormous amount of information. He did not attempt to analyze it at all. Instead, he directly transmitted it through the heavily chained crow and sent it into the external neuron. Luo Nan was able to understand what this sudden and unforeseen event was all about because he had this familiar scene as a comparison. He had dug out a piece from the body of the human-faced arachnid in the elevator. He had received a large amount of energy and a huge amount of information that could make one's brain stop. Right now in the conference room, the impetuous woman Cat Eyes was using her ability to spy on Luo Nan's creation. Little did she know that this creation was a part of Luo Nan's ability to operate on the mental plane. Frankly speaking, this sort of spying was extremely stupid. Cat Eyes had swapped places with the human-faced arachnid. She took the initiative to deliver herself to Luo Nan's doorstep when Luo Nan's mental plane was the most active. Then, she was pierced through by the heavily chained crow. The chains and the wraith sign dug out a piece from her, without a trace of politeness. The contents involved Cat Eyes' most proficient memories of long-range perception. The specific contents would need to be analyzed by the external neuron. Bang! Someone slammed the table when they saw Cat Eyes' miserable appearance. Kid Luo, what the hell are you doing? Bang! Someone beside Luo Nan also slammed the table and stood up. You bunch of idiots. What the hell are you doing when a psychic is working? The one who stood up and roared was Zhang Yingying. Perhaps it was because she had an instinctive protective heart towards the talent she had unearthed herself. She stood up without the slightest hesitation and tore at her friend. Her imposing manner soared to the heavens. When old you burns the turtle shell, why don't you try pouring a basin of water on it? Why don't you try smashing old Gao's altar when he's casting the spell? Try slapping Lao Bai's face when he's in the dream. Even if you don't know about manners, you should at least know about taboos, right? Since when did shamans become someone you can flirt with at any time? After a round of reprimanding, regardless of whether they were convinced or not, the group of ability users were all dumbfounded. At this moment Cat Eyes' shoulder moved. She began to show signs of regaining consciousness. The people at the side crowded around to take a look. Approximately 5 or 6 seconds passed before Cat Eyes finally regained her wits. She sat up straight with the help of someone. She blinked her eyes and had a blank expression on her face. What happened? Did he lose his memory? Someone stretched out his finger. Kitty, how many is this? Scram. Cat Eyes' vitality did not diminish in the slightest as she scratched with her long manicured fingers. She quickly recovered and began to feel annoyed that there were too many people crowding around her. She waved her hand to chase them away. Love Gope Small Say Netku, what happened just now? Give me a clear explanation. Aye. How would I know? Cat Eyes' voice was sharp and clear when she spoke, but when she looked at Luo Nan, she clearly felt a bit weak. I was just looking at the painting and feeling the changes in his aura in passing. I wanted to see if this painting was for real or just to scare people. Oh, more than half of the people rolled their eyes. Just looking at the painting was fine. Why did you have to feel his aura? When a psychic was working, the rise and fall of his aura was equivalent to the life and death combat state of a combatant. A single mistake would cause a reversal. Who knew what the consequences would be? Zhang Yingying slammed the table on the spot. Kitty, do you not want to live anymore? Cat Eyes was clearly a bit embarrassed. I was just trying. I was just curious. There are a few psychics in the society. Each and every one of them are hidden like thieves. It's rare to see such an interesting lad. Mr. Luo. He Wayne completely ignored the ruckus of these unreliable people. She noticed that Luo Nan had not opened his mouth to speak for a long time. Zhang Yingying turned her head when she heard this. She saw Luo Nan with his half-opened eyes and a stupefied expression. It didn't seem like he was angry. It seemed like he had lost consciousness. Cat Eyes. She no longer affectionately called her Kitty. She directly called her by her full nickname. This proved that Zhang Yingying was truly angry. Luo Nan is just a rookie. Do you understand? Plus, he's a gifted student, not a systematic student. He doesn't know any taboos, especially psychics. They can't even protect him in time. Yet you purposely poke him. Do you even have the intelligence of a professional? Whether it was Cat Eyes or the friends by his side, they all knew that they had caused a huge disaster. Each and every one of them shrunk their heads, not uttering a single word. Yuan pressed against her ears for a moment. She frowned at Zhang Yingying and said, "I've been looking for old you. I haven't been able to contact him. He might be in a psychic state. I don't know how to contact Mr. Gao and Mr. Bai. You contact them and ask how to handle this situation." "Oh, okay." Zhang Yingying knew that the situation was urgent. She immediately did as she was told. Cough. "I'm not a gifted student. I'm a systematic student." A sudden voice rang out. Luonan raised his half-closed eyelids and corrected Zhang Yingying's misunderstanding once more. Zhang Yingying was startled and then overjoyed. She wanted to pat Luonan on the shoulder, but she thought for a bit. In the end, she didn't dare to do so. She just slapped the table in passing. "As long as you're fine, you'll be a systematic student in the future. In the future, if anyone is blind enough to dare say that you're a gifted student, I'll chop them in half." As she spoke, her gaze swept across the faces of a few unreliable fellows across from her. Cat Eyes immediately raised her hands in surrender. "Yes, I'm a systematic student without a doubt." Even Cat Eyes, the instigator of all this, was kneeling. The others grunted and groaned. They could only tacitly agree to this preposterous classification. Yuan's cold and hard fingers pressed against the side of Luonan's neck. She felt the amount of blood flowing through his aorta. Her other hand gently placed on his forehead. She spoke softly. "Are there any symptoms of congestion or ischemia in your brain? Dizziness, blackness in front of your eyes?" Luonan shook his head a bit awkwardly. "I'm fine." Luonan really was fine. His mind was clear from the very beginning. The reason why he didn't react to the outside world was because his attention was completely focused on the external neuron. Though the two pieces of information that have been dug up could both be described as enormous, the contents of Cat Eyes' long-range perception were nothing in comparison. The external neuron was still in the process of analyzing the human-faced arachnid's information. However, Cat Eyes had already finished analyzing the information within a short dozen or so seconds. Luonan's mind stirred slightly, and the interface of the flexible e-ink screen appeared on his retina. He noticed that the number of icons on the interface had changed once more. Chapter 75. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Shuo.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Just like in the underground laboratory, on the main interface of the flexible e-ink screen, there was only one additional icon. It wasn't the previously existing gear, but it still had an extremely familiar appearance. The tetrahedron inscribed sphere and circumscribed sphere. Luonan's visualization diagram. However, the icon was dark as a hole. It was as if an application had been downloaded, but the download and installation had not been completed. Most of it was still in the shadows, and only a very small portion was lit up. The progress showed 1%. It was surprisingly slow. Luonan's telepathic thoughts swept over the surface. He made some basic information clear, but doubts followed. In the end, how much did he dig out from the body of the human-faced arachnid? If he wanted to express the theme, shouldn't it be displayed as wraith sign or something? What did it have to do with visualization? These questions could only be answered after the download, analysis was completed. Luonan paid attention to another matter. The results of his analysis of Cat Eyes were not displayed on the main interface. He felt that there was a layer separating him from it when he wanted to touch it. There seemed to be some tricks to it. Hey, are you okay? Zhang Yingying, as well as the other people in the conference room, saw Luonan inexplicably enter a trance state after replying with a few sentences. Their hearts grew more and more uncertain. Being a shaman was a profession that involved mysterious things on the spiritual level. It was really not easy to grasp. Other than old Yu Gao Deshuan, who was well cultivated and didn't seem to have any abnormalities, the rest of the spirit mediums in the association were all a little neurotic. It was said that it had something to do with the backlash they received when they used their abilities in their early years. Zhang Yingying could not help but glare angrily at Cat Eyes, who knew that Luo Nan's line of sight would move at this time. He moved in sync with Zhang Yingying and pointed at Cat Eyes. Love Gobe Small say Netka Cat Eyes was already a bit immune to Zhang Yingying's angry glare. But when Luo Nan looked at her with an unreadable expression, her heart suddenly skipped a beat. She was inexplicably nervous. Hey, what are you so nervous about? Even Cat Eyes herself could not bear to watch her overly abnormal emotions. She had always been a troublemaker. She was careless, and her courage was outrageous. She had always prided herself on this. However, ever since she caused trouble just now, she felt that her heart had no roots, and she had really become an obedient cat. Now that she was facing Luo Nan, the feeling of weakness continued to sprout. Finally, her self-consciousness counterattacked. He was yelled at by Zhang Yingying just now because they were friends. Who the hell do you think you are? Cat Eyes immediately widened her eyes. She glared back at Luo Nan, and her mouth became even more unrestrained. What? You want compensation? Sure, can I sleep with you? According to her observations of Luo Nan, this introverted and immature kid would most likely be unable to resist. In the end, Zhang Yingying would have to take the lead. When the time came, she would pester him endlessly for a bit, and give him a more or less reasonable explanation. But the problem was that Luo Nan's gaze was completely devoid of any emotions that could be interpreted. Luo Nan was not affected by any external emotions, including Cat Eye's deliberate provocation. Luo Nan saw that Zhang Yingying wanted to slap the table again, but he just nodded to Cat Eyes. Come over and help me out, okay? Everyone in the conference room looked at each other in dismay. Cat Eyes pointed at herself and said, Me? Hold on. This posture is too weak. Cat Eyes wanted to flip out again, but Luo Nan had already lowered his head. His digital pen fell onto the flexible e-ink screen once more. What are you pretending for at such a young age? Cat Eyes let out a laugh. She suddenly jumped over from the table without any warning. Her 12-centimeter roots were as tall as the heavens, and she landed noiselessly. Her movements were nimble, and she was truly like a large cat. The thick and dizzying smell of perfume covered the entire area. She supported herself on the table with one hand, and half of her body turned into a shadow. She fell onto the flexible e-ink screen in Luo Nan's hand. Hey, pretentious kid. How do you want me to help you? It can't be that you can't draw a picture, so you want to find a scapegoat in the end, right? Luo Nan glanced at her. He just felt that this woman was unreasonable. But sudden inspiration was very precious. He didn't want to make a mistake, so he simply lowered his head and looked straight at the flexible e-ink screen. He said, Don't talk. Try your best not to let your imagination run wild. Look at this picture of mine. What do you think? You want to harm me again? Thinking back to the miserable state of her bloodshot eyes, Cat Eyes felt a bit weak in her heart. It wasn't easy for her imposing manner to rise, but it rapidly declined. Zhang Yingying pushed her from behind. I've already looked at it several dozen times. Nothing happened. You're clearly looking to die, okay? Who knows if you guys are having an affair or not? Cat Eyes casually mocked back. She squinted her eyes, looking as if she wanted to look, but did not dare to look. Shut up. Luo Nan's commanding words entered her ears, and Cat Eyes' heart skipped a beat. She really did not speak anymore. Her eyes opened a bit, and she looked towards Luo Nan's flexible e-ink screen. She had already used her long-range perception to scan this sketch, but she did not discover anything strange about it. But now that she obeyed Luo Nan's command, her gaze fell down, and the feeling was completely different. There were all sorts of figures on the sketch. For example, a small boat with chains hanging down. There were reefs that faced the wind and waves. They were all extremely eye-catching. But she inexplicably locked the focus of her gaze onto a certain fish that seemed to be swimming in circles within the muddy river. It looks a lot like me. An absurd thought assaulted her mind. Then she saw Luo Nan's digital pen fall down. It drew out many lines around the fish that she was gazing at. It even drew out its body. Strangely enough, her mind became a bit absent-minded when these lines appeared. It was as if the lines did not fall onto the flexible e-ink screen, but rather they were being pulled out from her body. There was an incorporeal specter reaching out with its hand. It seemed to be gently caressing, but it also seemed to be cutting into her internal organs and skull, dissecting her entire body. When this thought became clear, Cat Eye's body froze on the spot. The group of ability users saw Luo Nan draw on the spot. Luo Nan's pretentiousness was raised high, and their curiosity was piqued. They all gathered around in a circle. From their perspective, Luo Nan's sketch appeared chaotic at first glance, but it was extremely intuitive. The originally chaotic interweaving river structure inexplicably cleared out a relatively clear trajectory as the tip of the pen moved. It clearly symbolized the route that the fish had taken to get here. Some of the quick-witted ones vaguely understood that this seemed to be tracing back to something that had happened before. Psychics could trace back to the past. They could foresee the future. The conference room was silent for a time. No one dared to disturb the work of a genuine psychic. Sister He, Luo Nan suddenly spoke once more. This was just a habitual action, but he quickly reacted. He switched to the psychic wave network and entered Project 001 to converse with He Yuan. At this time, a blurry figure appeared on the structural map of the Limestone Water Village pub. He tried to find a matching area within it. The problem was that Luo Nan was unfamiliar with the operation, so he could only seek help from others. Luo Nan and He Yuan's little movements could not be hidden from others. The group of ability users did not need to think to know what was going on. They immediately rushed into the encrypted channel and switched to Project 001. The only one who did not do this was Cat Eyes. At this very moment, she was completely unable to divert any energy. Her legs, which were wrapped in black stockings, were trembling uncontrollably. If she had not used her hands to support herself on the table, she might have already fallen to her knees. That specter, that incorporeal specter, was not satisfied with dissecting her completely. It began to greedily devour her. Cat Eyes could only feel her strength rapidly draining away. Her consciousness grew more and more absent-minded. And the source of all of this? She could still see the tip of the pen on the flexible e-ink screen. It seemed to be flowing, but every minute pause was a heavy bombardment on the mental plane. Luo Nan. It could only be Luo Nan. This demon. Cat Eyes recalled the entire process from beginning to end, and suddenly understood. This was clearly a conspiracy, a set of traps. It was a demon ritual that was publicly launched under the watchful eyes of everyone. Chapter 76. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go? Shua Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Under the stimulation of anger, Cat Eyes felt that her thoughts were unprecedentedly clear. She wanted to destroy this demon's scheme. She immediately opened her mouth to shout, but only then did she discover that not a single muscle in her body was listening to her commands. Anger was only a temporary flame, while fear was a boundless tide that would extinguish the flame as soon as it rose. At this time, all of Cat Eye's strength had melted away in the great tide of fear. At the same time, her will had melted away as well. In the tide of fear, feelings of regret began to emerge. This demon, he's been eyeing me for a long time? Or is it because I bumped into him? God, I'm so stupid. Amidst her self-reproach, Cat Eyes was like a sacrificial offering placed on an altar. Her body could not move, her mouth could not speak, and even her thoughts gradually stiffened. Only his blood and soul flowed out bit by bit, flowing to an unknown destination. She tried to find the home of her blood and soul, but in a daze, it was as if she had fallen into a boundless dark prison. In the restless darkness, the treacherous and cold 6 spots of light lit up. The blurry silhouette around it moved its many legs and gradually approached. His already stiff consciousness suddenly moved, receiving a stimulus. It was a vivid memory from the target's information. Human-faced arachnid? Why the human-faced arachnid? In her daze, no one could answer her questions, let alone ease her fear. When the human-faced arachnid's image became clear, the surrounding dark veil seemed to come alive. It possessed its own meaning. The twisting darkness at the front of the human-faced arachnid that was constantly drawing closer to her must be its ugly mouth. He was going to be chewed, corroded, and swallowed. No, absolutely not. Cat Eyes suddenly came to a realization that came from the spiritual perception of an awakened. It didn't matter if this was a devil's ritual, or if it was a trap or a plot. If she was truly devoured by the human-faced arachnid right now, she would certainly be consigned to eternal damnation. She would never have the chance to start over again. Help, help. Someone save me. Cat Eyes howled at the top of her lungs in the gradually muddled mental plane. But on the plane of reality, she merely hung her head and trembled slightly. Love Gobe Smalp say net chew. The more she sensed the real situation, the more despair she felt. What kind of power could confine her in this terrifying darkness? Was there no power that could save her? Walala! A strange trembling sound rang out. From the deepest part of the darkness, a long chain shimmering with a faint light suddenly pierced through. This was a change that Cat Eyes could not comprehend at all. But she was faced with the desperate situation of the human-faced arachnids devouring. She struggled to grab hold of any variable. If both of them were in a hopeless situation, she would choose the relatively better one. She focused all of her consciousness and screamed desperately, "Help, help!" The chains clearly sensed her summons and came crashing through the air. Cat Eyes did not have the slightest intention of evading. She allowed the chains to pierce through her body and pierce through her soul. She did not feel any pain. Instead, she felt a strange sense of support. She tried her best to penetrate the shackles into every corner of her body and mind. The walala trembling sound disappeared and was replaced by a strange kasuasuasua sound. Every time a chain was locked, it would be dead. From Cat Eyes' perspective, this represented a safety rope on the body of a person in danger. Every time a chain was locked, she felt a wonderful sense of security and satisfaction. Then, Cat Eyes felt herself rise up and gradually leave this darkness. Her strength gradually recovered, and her consciousness entered the plane of reality. She faintly felt that something was wrong. But the incomparably realistic experience of the mental plane collided with reality. It was as if she was placed in a half-awake and half-awake dream. Everything that was inconceivable seemed to be as it should be. She even took the initiative to enter the psychic wave network and went to Project 001, where everyone was gathered. At this time, she was completely capable of letting out a cry for help that she had not been able to before. But this thought had just emerged when it was extinguished like a bubble in the face of enormous fear and uncertainty. Cat Eyes had a feeling that the chains that pierced through her body and soul were her support. But a single sound could strangle her to death. In other words, her life was completely in the hands of the chain's controller. This was completely illogical. But Cat Eyes did not have the courage to verify it in her current dazed and chaotic mental state. Right now, all she wanted was for this damnable operation to end quickly, so that she could properly sort out the logic within. Or perhaps the controller of the chain. Cat Eyes' gaze fell upon Luonan's body. It was him, this demon. It would be fine if he could give her a clear explanation. But from beginning to end, Luonan did not give her a single glance or a single hint. It was to the point that Cat Eyes sometimes wondered if everything that was happening before her eyes was just a hallucination of a mental patient. And at this time, an astonishing development occurred in Project 001. A low clamor sounded in the encrypted communications channel. "It's right! It's right! Where is this?" Everyone's attention was focused there, including Cat Eyes. The dream and reality were connected. The two mutually permeated each other. Everything became as it should be. Project 001 had already turned into a conference channel. Cat Eyes' late arrival did not attract anyone's attention. Everyone focused their attention on the structural diagram of Limestone Water Village Pub. The diagram that Luonan took out corresponded to a certain part of the diagram. The diagram that came from Luonan was a variant of a hexagram. The corners were slightly rounded. This sort of structure did not exist on any of the floors of the building. However, when Yuan changed her train of thought and piled up the floor plans of each floor, the answer suddenly appeared. It's the west side of the 16th, 17th, and 18th floors. The rooms of the 3 floors are grouped together. It belongs to a KTV club. Wayne came to a conclusion after looking through the hotel's information. The relevant information was immediately converted into psychic wave information and transmitted directly into everyone's brain. Wayne's move, even with the support of the Hexa-ear, was an extremely high-level application on the mental plane. It was hard for normal awakened to even dream of it. But at this time, no one expressed any astonishment. This was because all the astonished emotions had long since been filled up by Luo Nan. Zhang Yingying's question represented practically everyone. What does this position represent? Is it the hiding place of the human-faced arachnid? Yes. I believe that this is just a place where it once stayed. Moreover, it played a crucial role in forming its current state. Luo Nan honestly explained according to the feeling he got from his drawing. He also felt that he was becoming more and more like a psychic. But you went straight to the 21st floor. You've never been here before, right? No. You've never been here before. This is my first time here. Even though the large living area had an awe-inspiring reputation within Acumen College, this was Luo Nan's first time here. On the other side, Bamboo Pole could not help but speak in doubt. Then how did you come up with this diagram? Out of thin air? Luo Nan still answered every question. I've never been here before. But Cat Eyes should have been here before. In an instant, everyone's gazes turned to Cat Eyes in unison. Chapter 77. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Cat Eyes suddenly had a ridiculous feeling of absurdity as she faced everyone's gazes. Love Gope Small say, Neki, you guys are searching for the human-faced arachnid here. Do you know that there is a fellow who can snatch food from the mouth of the human-faced arachnid sitting right next to you? But in the end, she just replied blankly, I've been to the 18th floor and passed by this KTV, but I didn't feel any hexagram. Cat Eyes did not use the psychic wave network. Instead, she spoke directly. This made her feel that she was a bit closer to reality. No one could understand her current state of mind. Everyone thought back to Luo Nan's request for Cat Eyes' help. Someone couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice, That's awesome. This is memory reading and subconscious digging. Lao Bai's dreamland technique? Old Bai's results are all messed up. How can it be so clear? Yes, it's completely graphic, so it's not easy to decipher. Hey kitty, does it feel good to be dug so deeply? Finally, there was someone who was concerned about Cat Eyes' condition. However, Cat Eyes responded with a 12-centimeter tall slender root. With a howl, the one with the foul mouth knelt down, hugging his feet. Wayne clapped her hands, getting everyone present to focus their attention. In any case, we must conduct an investigation. We must strive to understand the mysteries behind the growth of the human-faced arachnid's strength. At the same time, you can also do some practice. The previous meeting had more or less produced some results. Wayne convinced this group of ability users. In this situation where they were unable to sense the human-faced arachnid, they had to formulate a strategy around Luo Nan in order to guarantee their safety and effectiveness. Due to the lack of time, they had only made a preliminary design. There were many details that had not been perfected. They could use this opportunity to demonstrate it on the spot. From the 81st floor to the 18th floor, the 63rd floor should be fine, right? No one answered and no one cowered. At a time like this, there must be no problem. Luo Nan looked all around. It seemed that he was the only one who didn't understand what was going on. That's right. When they were arguing just now, I was lost in thought. Currently in the Limestone Water Village pub, there were a total of 12 members. Among them, the Black Wolf was heavily injured and unconscious, while the Black Beetle had long since left the team, leaving only 10 members. In addition, there were 4 professional bodyguards that Wayne had brought along. One of them was assigned to take care of Black Wolf, Shuelei, and the others who were injured. This way, there were a total of 13 people. This was precisely the centralized mode that Wayne had always advocated. Of course, this mode didn't mean that everyone had to squeeze into the same elevator. The 13 of them were divided into 2 groups. Luo Nan, He Yuan, Zhang Yingying, the 3 bodyguards, and the society's Cragburst. A total of 7 people walked through the elevator. The power to protect Luo Nan was strengthened to the greatest degree. The other 6 people maintained a certain distance. They descended rapidly from the fire escape passageway and the inclined surface of the outer wall of the building. They formed a resonance with Luo Nan and the others. The hexa ear was used to maintain communication in the middle, in case they encountered an attack from the human-faced arachnid, or if Luo Nan formed a clear response, they would quickly form an encirclement of support. The strategy was simple and crude, but it was very suitable for this temporary combination. Only the awakened could achieve such a direct method of advancement. Among them, Cat Eyes was nimble and lithe, as well as her long-range perception ability. She naturally became the scouting vanguard, and she was also one of the members that descended from the building. She shuttled back and forth amidst the interweaving lights and shadows of the building. The cold autumn night wind blew against her face. In the past, it would have been so carefree, but now, it was unable to blow away the knot in her heart. Cat Eyes was still hoping that she would be far away from Luo Nan. The situation of being bound and restrained would take a turn for the better. But when she deliberately dashed forward, putting a distance of 100 meters between them, the incorporeal chains continued to exist. Some of the chains were even buckling together. They made a clicking sound that was neither too fast nor too slow that only she could hear. She could not help but tremble with every sound that rang out. Although the physical distance was pulled apart, she was clearly getting closer and closer to the master of the chains on the mental plane. It was absolutely not an emotional distance. Instead, it was a terrifying magnification and distortion. Luo Nan's current state of mind was tranquil and slightly depressed. From Cat Eye's perspective, it was like the gray clouds of the desert sky were pressing down on her head. She unconsciously felt a bit suffocated. She seemed to be able to hold on for now, but she did not dare to imagine what would happen to her if Luo Nan became irritable and furious. "Kitty, you're rushing forward too much," Zhang Yingying reminded her through the hexa ear. Cat Eyes snorted to herself. Her tall and slender roots drew a long mark on the glass wall, stopping her downward momentum. She speculated maliciously in her mind. Did Luo Nan tie up this Zhang Yingying long ago? Did she wag her tail and beg for pity? Does Her Majesty Empress Wu know about this? But soon, reason and her senses simultaneously told her that this was clearly not the case. Up until now, she was the only unlucky person in the vicinity. This answer made Cat Eyes even more vexed. Currently, Cat Eyes was the first to reach the 20th floor. She had taken the 5 floors up and down, a vast area of 50 meters in diameter, into the range of her senses. According to the plan, she leaped into the hallway of the building and walked down the fire escape. At the same time, she reported the situation. "It really is a KTV. It's also a clubhouse, the kind that hurts the eyes. Humph, the age composition is seriously low. Young people these days." Cat Eyes entered the clubhouse, which was decorated in a blurry and strange style. It was like a maze, just like the vast majority of similar places. Cat Eyes was dressed in a fiery dancer outfit. She fit in quite well. The young boys passing by cast their gazes at her. Occasionally, they would bump into a waiter, but they would be confused by the thick makeup on her face. In a moment of stupefaction, they would pass by her. Cat Eyes swayed her long legs. She seemed to be leisurely, but she was actually very nimble as she passed through the rooms on the 3 floors. In the end, she arrived at the 16th floor. According to the floor plan, this was one of the largest rooms in the hexagram structure. Right now, a fiery party was going on inside. Although she did not enter the room, her sight, hearing, and smell had already clearly reproduced the situation inside with her long-range senses. Cat Eyes lazily transmitted, "No ability users have been discovered. Do you want to do an on-the-spot investigation?" This time, it was He Yuan who spoke. "Don't destroy the scene. Wait until Mr. Luo arrives before handling it." Just as the call ended, someone swayed over from behind. It was a young lad. His age could not be over 20, but it was clear that he was very experienced. He pretended to be dizzy and simply reached out with his hand to touch Cat Eye's perky buttocks. However, when he was 2 centimeters away, the young drunkard felt a pain in his wrist. He inexplicably swung his body to the side and slammed into the wall with a bang. The young drunkard was in a daze. Just as his anger was rising, he was suddenly dumbfounded. Cat Eyes was silently leaning against the wall to the side. The sexy curves in the tight sequin dance costume, the long legs wrapped in black stockings, and the thin and tall legs that stretched the soles of her feet, together with the wall and the floor, naturally formed a soul-stirring shape. Her casually scattered short curly hair covered a small half of her face. Her fiery red lips faintly opened and closed, forming a smile that was not a smile. "Little brother, do you have a cigarette?" The young drunkard immediately forgot about his previous encounter. He chuckled foolishly. "I don't have any on me, but I do have some inside. Our Mystic Arts Research Society does this. Let's go together." He reached out with his hand to touch Cat Eye's towering chest. However, what welcomed him was the world spinning once more. This time, his head slammed into the wall, and he immediately fainted. Chapter 78. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go, speak net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Cat Eyes exerted her strength ingeniously. She let the young drunkard support himself with his shoulders and feet. He was half leaning and half crooked, maintaining his body from falling. Love go little say Netku. In addition to the flirtatious beauty at his side, it was a typical case of a pervert meeting a flirtatious ghost. They were about to fool around together. The waiters that passed by occasionally cast curious glances at them at most. They didn't have any other reactions. Cat Eyes just waited at the door. She even had the leisure to pull out a lady's cigarette and light it. She casually asked in the channel, "What the hell is the Mystic Arts Research Society?" There are 6 schools nearby. There are 4 societies with the same name. The Mystic Arts has been quite popular in recent years. The figure just now is a variation of the Star of David. It doesn't seem like a coincidence. Bamboo Pole, who was in charge of intelligence work, indicated for Cat Eyes to lift up the drunkard's face. He gave her a face recognition and soon came to an answer. Huang Bingjin, Acumen College's Mystic Arts Research Society officer. He's a rich 2nd generation. Acumen College. Zhang Yingying let out an unclear laugh. Unfortunately, no one besides Luonan understood. Bamboo Pole continued. In addition, I discovered something amazing in the club's database. Take a look at what it is, a contact list. They're all female students. The information is complete. The types are plentiful. There's everything you need. Wow. A strange silence appeared in the channel until Crag Burst, who was next to Luonan, cursed and revealed the secret. They're charging by the head. Bamboo Pole, why don't you go die? Crag Burst was a 2-meter-tall brawny man. He had spent nearly 10 years in the military. His temperament was a bit coarse, but he was an extremely good choice for a bodyguard and shield. It was because of his military background that he was the most respectful and cooperative towards He Yuan. Love Gob Little say Netka. He instinctively glanced over, but He Yuan's expression didn't change. It was as if she hadn't heard a thing. Bamboo Pole didn't forget about proper business in the private channel. The database contains the agreement signed between the club and Acumen College's Mystic Arts Research Society. You can see that the club was renovated 4 years ago in accordance with the design requirements of the society. At the same time, this club is also a big financial backer of the club. The funds listed in the public accounts are more than 7 figures every year, and it's even more unclear in private. The elevator had already reached the 16th floor. Unlike Cat Eyes, this group of people was too big of a target. The waiter came over early to inquire about them. He Yuan ignored him and directly asked Luonan, "Mr. Luo?" Luonan raised his head and looked at this strange and indistinct clubhouse space. The basic characteristic of the coating on the outer wall was that it was made up of peculiar tree vines and decorative designs that encircled the mysterious circular structure of a magical array. The dim, dark red streams of light were like solvents entering tubes in a laboratory. They passed through the vines and patterns on the wall, and traveled among the seemingly independent magic circles. Luonan looked for quite a while before speaking in a low voice. The lighting effects here are quite interesting. The waiter clearly saw who was standing in the middle of the crowd, and immediately revealed a standard smile. The style of our clubhouse was planned and designed by a professional mysticism team in order to bring our customers a brand new and special experience. Luonan interrupted the waiter's cliché. Prepare a private room for us. Also, are the members of the Mystic Society still in 1613? Luonan was referring to the room that Cat Eyes had locked onto. The waiter nodded and Luonan headed over there. He Wayne ordered the 3 bodyguards to wait in the private room first. Zhang Yingying had the waiter prepare a fruit platter and red wine. She had the appearance of meeting a guest before having fun. At the same time, He Wayne issued an order on the psychic wave network. Octopus. Hallucinogen. Several seconds later, a young man wearing a funny cartoon t-shirt and a jacket came out from a nearby restroom. He greeted Cat Eyes, who was waiting outside 1613, and directly pushed open the door to enter. Cat Eyes grabbed the young drunkard next to her and entered the private room right behind him. The overall structure of 1613 was an extremely standard circular shape. The dazzling projection equipment in the center was designed in the form of a very peculiar lampstand. Right now, it ignited with an ambiguous pink glow, smearing the dusky room into an even more chaotic mess. There were no sofas, chairs, or the like in the private room. There were only a few soft cushions. Everyone was casually sitting on the ground. There were 20 to 30 people playing and accompanying. But right now, these people were already under the dual effects of their own drugs and Octopus's hallucinogen. Their consciousness was in chaos. They were either men and women hugging each other, or laughing and crying. They were completely unaware of the changes in the outside world. Even Octopus did not expect this excessively intense result. He was currently adjusting the composition of the drug in a flurry, to avoid creating a group of idiots. Cat Eyes rolled her eyes at him, and casually tossed the drunkard to the ground. Hurry up. We're already outside. A knock rang out from the door as they spoke. The waiter was the first to walk in. He saw this scene, but he didn't seem surprised at all. He very naturally spoke to Octopus, who was standing there in a clear-headed state. A guest has come to visit. Luonan and his group walked in as they spoke. Aha! Lo Nanster. Octopus didn't care about the drug. He had a pleasantly surprised appearance of seeing an old friend. He laughed heartily as he walked forward and gave Luo Nan an extremely forceful hug. His clumsy and pale acting made He Wayne frown. However, the waiter really didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. He turned around and left after Zhang Yingying took the fruit platter and red wine. The scene of a dove occupying a magpie's nest was completed. Luonan coughed as he pushed Octopus away. He also stopped his passionate patting. He looked around the room and saw the chaotic situation. For a time he didn't know what to say. Zhang Yingying casually picked up a piece of fruit and sent it into her mouth to taste. She said vaguely, "Are you disappointed? It looks like you were nearly one of them." Luonan responded casually, "It looks like there are quite a few places where I can be of use. I don't have to worry about not having a spot in the future." Huh. Luonan no longer paid attention to Zhang Yingying. He turned to Octopus with a smile. "Bro Octopus, your drug concoction is quite beautiful. Please give me some pointers in the future." Octopus was baffled. He could only laugh. Well said, well said. Cat Eyes shot him a cold glance and directly fired a map cannon. A bunch of trash. This group of people turned from guest to host. They greeted and chatted within the room. But He Wayne didn't forget the most important matter from beginning to end. She looked all around at the decorations of the room, and the decorations on the walls. Her brows furrowed tighter and tighter. She stepped over the bodies lying on the ground, and walked to the center of the projection equipment. She carefully observed the extremely medieval style of the lampstand. Luonan didn't bother with Zhang Yingying and the others right now. He continued to observe and sense, but his attention was placed on the rather gorgeous pattern of the floor. Under the cover of the bodies, the pattern seemed to be broken and continuous. It passed through the transfer of many geometric figures to converge towards the central region. Finally, Luo Nan's gaze also cast towards the lamp stand. He just so happened to collide with He Yuan's gaze. Mr. Luo? Luo Nan nodded towards her. The human-faced arachnid should have appeared here before. Chapter 79. I think that the surrounding things are all its nourishment. Luo Nan pointed at the surrounding squirming and giggling human bodies. The human-faced arachnid really did have a special fondness for these negative emotions and desires. He hesitated for a moment before continuing to speak. There are also these patterns. They count as magical arrays. I know very little about the mystic arts. Are there any that I'm good at? Zhang Yingying immediately raised her hand from behind. Does my experience with tarot cards count? He Yuan saw that Luo Nan wanted to say something but hesitated. She directly said, Right now, Mr. Luo, you are the only one among us who has the qualifications to make a judgment about the human-faced arachnid. There is no need to introduce other explanations. Zhang Yingying stuck out her tongue. Luo Nan scratched his head, but in the end he continued. In the beginning, I thought that these decorations, the vines, the patterns, and the magical arrays were all just for show. They had no real meaning. But here, a portion of the patterns seem to have displayed their use. They are like water channels, gathering a portion of energy here. Luo Nan pointed at the projector in the form of a lampstand. He didn't need to bring out his psychic abilities. He just needed to use his eyes to do this. The geometric patterns, and the lampstand left behind remnants similar to the dark red spores on the warship. But they were also slowly evaporating. He Yuan couldn't see these residues, but she took out a small and exquisite spray from her pocket and sprayed it on the lampstand. After 2 seconds, the light screen that came with the spray flickered with a faint light. Luo Nan could roughly guess that this should be a special substance similar to the shadow mist. It was capable of capturing traces of the Darksider species, interfering with the real world. Indeed, there are remnants of the relevant rays. Zhang Yingying walked over at this time. She pressed down on Luo Nan's shoulder and looked at the lampstand. A while passed before she spoke to He Yuan, who was carefully observing as well. The matter seems to be complicated. Does it involve a secret order? He Yuan grunted, but didn't immediately respond. Secret order? Luo Nan didn't understand. An inexplicable and troublesome organization of lunatics. Luo Nan stared at her. You said that ability users don't have secret societies and the like. Nothing is absolute in this world. And it's not a secret society, it's a cult, okay? Zhang Yingying saw that He Yuan didn't respond for a time. She faced Luo Nan and shrugged her shoulders. Think about it. There are 600,000 ability users in the entire world. The number of people who have a relatively complete cultivation system and have cultivated in a down-to-earth manner is at most a tenth. As for the remaining 500,000 or so, many of them have inexplicably acquired certain abilities. If no one guides them in time, many of them will start to become arrogant and consider themselves to be new human beings or children of God. They think that they are at the peak of mankind and can do whatever they want. That's what happens in many novels and comics, right? Hee, it's useless. This is the reality. Of course, most of these idiots would be taught a lesson by the police. If you can't even beat the exoskeleton armors, then don't brag about being a child of God or a holy infant. For those who are more troublesome, the burners of the military will meet them. After that, the association will communicate with them and welcome them into the organization to correct their worldview. Zhang Yingying spread her hands. But in the end, there are still some very special fellows. They should be considered the gifted among the gifted. They are indeed extremely powerful. Even within the society, I'm afraid they are the most top-notch. It's not easy to communicate with them. They don't agree with the society's definition of the ability system. Instead, they have another kind of explanation. But their explanations often use their own abilities to forcefully apply myths, religions, mystic arts, and other existing theories. Or they go wild with their imaginations and change their appearances. The final result is establishing sects and religions. There are many secret sections. These people want to put their exotic theories into practice in the world. They want to verify the holes in their imaginations. That's how they establish themselves. The problem is that they themselves are very powerful, but their related theories are very preposterous. If you cultivate according to their theories, most people will die very miserably. But there's no other way. Magical powers are more awesome than 10,000 sentences of truth. There are still large batches of people who join these sections. They offer their everything and are extremely devout. The government has a huge headache over these things. Of course, the society has a huge headache as well. Luo Nan heard the hidden meaning in her words. In other words, the society can't do anything about them. It's holding back for fear of hurting the innocent. The leaders of these sects are brainless, but their strength is really very strong. Plus, these sects are deeply rooted in the cities. With the current population density, it would be better to just drop a nuclear bomb in the center of the city, if they really were to turn hostile. Don't doubt me. Think about the human-faced arachnid. There's also the R&D district. Luo Nan was speechless for a time. He was a bit spellbound. Could those powerful ability users really possess the terrifying destructive power of a nuclear bomb? He was stimulated by this information. After coming back to his senses, he simply poured out the series of questions he had been suppressing at the bottom of his heart. Then how does the society define the ability system? In the end, what counts as an awakened? And what level am I at right now? Zhang Yingying's mouth and tongue were already parched from explaining the secret order. She was busy eating fruits to replenish herself. She waved her hand when she heard Luo Nan's words, speaking vaguely. You already have the hexa ear. Go take a look for yourself. I believe that Mr. Luo has already reached a certain level. He has even surpassed the level of a normal awakened. However, he is severely biased towards a certain field. He Yuan suddenly joined this topic and gave a relatively clear judgment. Zhang Yingying went hey and cried out. Let's not talk about this for now. How's the matter with the order? Luo Nan wanted to slap her. In the end, He Yuan was a bit more concerned about proper business. She responded, I've already notified the society. We'll be retreating for now. No way? What a strong start and a weak finish. Octopus, who was hurrying to adjust his medicine, raised his head. We're disbanding just like this? Actually, a certain order leader has already protested against the society's actions. We've interrupted their holy ritual. Octopus was shocked. We've been discovered? Luo Nan was quite baffled. How were we discovered? Cat Eyes glared at him for no reason at all. So you're blaming me? Zhang Yingying's attention was focused elsewhere. Holy ritual? Here. She simply tossed away the fruit platter, spread her hands, and laughed out loud. She didn't know who was the one who said things like fear of harming the innocent just now. He Yuan responded in the calmest manner towards the different reactions of the people in the room. There's no reasoning to speak with those order leaders. And the methods of the secret order really do exceed common sense. In any case, we're dealing with the human-faced arachnid, not the secret order. This operation is halted, and we're retreating. I will compile all matters into a brief and submit it to the society. It will be sent to everyone's hands. The speech this time was conducted through the psychic wave network. Immediately, the encrypted channel was filled with sighs and strange cries. Zhang Yingying raised her eyebrows. This order leader has jumped quite high. Are you sure they aren't colluding with the human-faced arachnid or something? What's their name? Show us. Yuan didn't say anything. She just tilted her head and indicated for Zhang Yingying to look at the center of the room. There was a projection device in the shape of a lampstand. It was unknown when, but the burning pink glow of the lampstand had already disappeared. Instead, a new image appeared on the two sides of the edge. There were two sets of thin chains hanging down, each pulling a flat plate. One plate was black, and the other was white. They were symmetrical and hung motionless in the air, forming the classic form of a scale. At this moment, Zhang Yingying grinned. She wanted to say something, but she didn't open her mouth in the end. Instead, Octopus let out a low cry. Chapter 80. Luonan looked at the group of people who were either shocked or had serious expressions. This time, Luonan didn't ask any more questions. He directly searched the Hexa-ear for an answer. Through a mental search, the standard answer quickly jumped out. The Order of Justice was one of the 3 world-level secret orders. It was also the only secret order known to the world that worshipped a holy object. It didn't have a clear inclination towards worshipping a personified god. The highest leader of the order was called the First Ablatum. The holy object of the order was called the Scales of Truth. Its basic teachings were extremely vague. There were only a few words: the fairness of the world, the justice of truth. Within the order, they were passionate about sacrificial rituals. They were known to use a fair exchange to realize the balance of the world. Truthfully speaking, Luonan didn't understand half of it, even though he had seen some introductions. There were some conceptual things that needed to be understood individually. At this time, He Yuan officially issued the order to retreat. After coming out of the private room, the temporary team had disbanded. He Yuan was still extremely strict. She informed every member that they shouldn't linger near Sky Capital Water Village until the society came up with a new opinion. It was best not to act alone. Although the human-faced arachnid had been heavily injured by her format of fire, and it might not be able to launch its next wave of attacks in a short amount of time, ability users who were alone were clearly the best tonic for it. "Oh my, I'm in such a sorry state." Bamboo Pole let out a sigh and said, "Good night everyone," before logging off. The other avatars in the encrypted communications channel disappeared one after the other. Luonan took the initiative to call out to Octopus. He added this drug concoction expert as a friend, ready to ask for help at any time. At the same time, he sent a request to Cragburst and Cat Eyes. Cragburst was very straightforward and responded very quickly, but Cat Eyes snorted coldly and just left. Luonan shrugged. He could feel that Cat Eye's attitude towards him had become increasingly vile after they completed the psychic drawing together. "Hey, be careful. Cat Eyes holds a lot of grudges." Octopus had a pretty good impression of Luonan. He patted Luonan on the shoulder and left with Cragburst. Luonan felt quite innocent. What did he do to Cat Eyes? The initial backlash was caused by Cat Eyes using her ability to spy on his psychic process, summoning the heavily chained crow to counterattack. Or could it be said that the psychic senses of an awakened made her feel that a piece of her information had been dug out? "You must have been too rough." Zhang Yingying giggled as she patted his back. "Don't be fooled by Cat Eyes' flirtatious appearance. In fact, I've never seen her have a boyfriend since she joined the guild." Maybe she's a reserved old virgin? Was this a joke a woman should make? Luonan was disinclined to pay attention. It was He Yuan who turned around and unexpectedly joined the conversation. "Mr. Luo, regarding the matter of Cat Eyes, your previous etiquette was a bit inappropriate." In the process of creating the psychic diagram, Mr. Luo should have probed and used Cat Eyes' memories and subconscious. In a certain sense, this constitutes an infringement on her free will. Of course, Mr. Luo must have done it unintentionally, but it would be better to apologize afterwards. Luonan went, a bit embarrassed. He Yuan continued to supplement his general knowledge in this area. As a spiritually strengthened ability user and psychic, Sir Luo will definitely encounter similar problems in the future. However, you just need to remember one thing. Ability users are extremely sensitive to free will, so prior communication and subsequent explanations are extremely necessary. Naturally, Luonan humbly accepted the teachings. At this moment, he thought of the evaluation that was interrupted by Zhang Yingying. It seemed that if he didn't clarify the situation now, he wouldn't have a chance today. "Sister He, you said I'm seriously biased." He Yuan also thought of this matter. After a moment of silence, she said, "If I were to evaluate Mr. Luo's ability on the mental plane, I would look at it from the effects of dealing with the human-faced arachnid. I will give you a C+, or even a B-. However, your body can only be an F, nothing more. Zhang Yingying laughed and said, "It can't be any less. Any less and I'll be a cripple." The corner of Luo Nan's mouth twitched. His body shouldn't be at this level. He had been training for many years. His toughness and agility should be above average. He Yuan coldly shot a glance at Zhang Yingying and solemnly said, "The consequences of a serious imbalance between the mind and the body are 100 times more serious than being crippled. Be it the military or quantum holdings, there were countless bloody examples. The reason why I'm doing this is that I hope Mr. Luo can take this seriously." Zhang Yingying was unable to continue laughing. Luo Nan was also speechless. Since Mr. Luo mentioned the format before, let's talk about the format. I can understand the meaning of the format that Mr. Luo spoke of. It's different from the archetype format that I'm used to. It should pay more attention to individual characteristics. Is this right? Luo Nan thought for a moment and reluctantly nodded his head. He Yuan focused her gaze on Luo Nan. If you view the format as a type of building, artists can erect skyscrapers with toothpicks. Designers can complete a complete set of blueprints on the computer. But those are just models. They are just data. Truly practical buildings must be constructed using qualified and durable building materials. After all, the first essence of a building is practicality. If it's as Mr. Luo says, you possess an effective format, then please choose the most suitable building materials for you and complete this building in a solid manner. This involves a complete transformation of your body's composition and mental willpower. It's absolutely not just visualization on the mental plane. If it's just data, then it's a bit better. But if it's an exquisite yet fragile piece of toothpick art that exists in the real world, it would collapse with a single breath. It would be meaningless. Aha! A toothpick-type man. Zhang Yingying clapped her hands in laughter. She didn't mind sprinkling salt on Luo Nan's wounds in the slightest. Who knew that He Yuan would change her target in the next moment? "Miss Zhang, I know that you don't have any ill intentions towards Mr. Luo, but for a newcomer like him, your habitual jokes or exaggerated expressions are very easy to mislead. Just like with regards to the issue of secret orders. Even though I don't like the way secret orders do things, I know that every secret order on record has a leader with an ability value of A. In the society's 3 levels of ability system, awakened, engineer, and extraordinary, they are at the top. They are powerhouses that stand at the peak of the world, and they also possess outstanding intelligence. They are absolutely not the powerful madmen that you speak of. You have a plan in mind, but it's very easy for you to cause Mr. Luo to misunderstand and form a wrong impression. For a psychic, this kind of wrong impression is very likely to be fatal." Zhang Yingying choked for a moment. Soon her eyebrows jumped up. She had made a mistake in her previous actions and received He Yuan's criticism. She had nothing to say. But right now, even her usual way of doing things had been reprimanded to the point of being useless. "He Yuan, you really think too highly of yourself." Luo Nan felt that the atmosphere between the two was extremely tense. But it was all related to him. He felt a bit awkward for a time. Right when he was thinking about how to mediate, his wristband vibrated. Luo Nan's eyelids jumped when he saw the number. He rushed to connect. "Auntie." Chapter 81. I'm still upstairs. Luo Nan was unable to mediate the conflict between the two ladies. He took 2 steps forward and responded in a low voice. There was no doubt that his aunt was waiting somewhere nearby, waiting for the cold dinner to end. Luo Nan didn't feel the slightest bit surprised at this sort of stalking behavior. His aunt had this sort of temperament. She was determined to bring him home tonight. She wouldn't give Luo Nan any reason to refuse. If it were a few days ago, Luo Nan would have done everything possible to escape his aunt's evil clutches. But right now, his drug production was in a state of shortage. There was nothing to do even if he returned to Blue Bay Community. His thoughts of refusing weren't that firm. Luo Nan resisted a few more times, but in the end, he threw in the towel and admitted defeat. I'm with a friend right now. I'll be down soon. Where are you, Aunt? I'll come find you in a bit. Admitting defeat to his aunt wasn't a big deal, but Luo Nan still had some reservations. The effects of the withdrawal reaction couldn't be ignored. Suddenly cutting off the drug supply could very well lead to some abnormal changes in his nervous system. His formatting had just shown results. What should he do if it regressed because of this? Luo Nan looked at the friend list on the Hexa and gained a bit of confidence. It seemed that he really did have an additional channel of choice after joining the society. Luo Nan first dealt with his aunt with grunts, and then turned to ask Zhang Yingying. Octopus Bro is very good at making drugs. Does he sell them to the outside world? Zhang Yingying blurted out. Who are you harboring evil intentions towards? There was no way to communicate. Sister you just have to display your invincible might and correct her 3 distorted views. Luo Nan rolled his eyes. He felt that it was more appropriate to directly communicate with Octopus Bro. But Zhang Yingying wasn't happy, probably because his expression was too obvious. She wrapped her arms around his neck. Hey, speak clearly. What the hell do you want? 9.5 out of 10 people who do business with Octopus Bro aren't good people. Oh, wait a minute. Zhang Yingying suddenly reached out and pulled at his face. Of course, Luo Nan wouldn't let her move, but this woman's strength far exceeded his by who knows how many levels. He was simply unable to resist. How many times had this happened? Luo Nan's face was flushed red. He was unable to suppress his anger. He Yuan frowned and wanted to stop her, but Zhang Yingying looked as if she had let go of all past grievances. She called out to her. Come. Let's take a look. I've always felt that the color of this kid's pupils was abnormal, as if he had taken too many drugs. Tell me, do you usually have this kind of bad habit? Why was he suddenly so sharp? Luo Nan was shocked. He forgot to struggle, and Zhang Yingying forced his eyelids open. However, what could she see under the dim lighting of the clubhouse? He Yuan pulled Zhang Yingying's arm and said in a low voice, Stop fooling around. We haven't left the church's territory yet. Luo Nan finally broke free from Zhang Yingying's grip, but he still clenched his teeth in depression. What was up with this woman's monstrous strength? In the eyes of an awakened, was his body so weak that it was close to being crippled? He secretly swore that he would communicate with Zhang Yingying again after he achieved the balance of his body and mind and truly became an awakened. In any case, after He Yuan's interruption, Zhang Yingying didn't pursue the matter of him taking drugs. Luo Nan didn't want to stay with Zhang Yingying for a while. He wanted to leave, but he remembered that Shui Lei and Chen Xiaolin were still on the 81st floor. He had to go take a look at the situation. Luo Nan arrived at the floor without incident. He had just opened the elevator door when chaotic sounds came from the corridor. Luo Nan didn't care at first, but after a few steps, he saw figures scattered in front of him. There were waiters, medical staff, He Yuan's bodyguards, and so on. They were conversing outside the door. Shui Lei, who was supposed to be lying in the room, had his head lowered as he leaned against the wall. He looked very dejected. Luo Nan had a good impression of this student, who had a straightforward personality and high martial strength. After fighting side by side, the feeling was different. He immediately walked over and asked probingly, Lei, are you okay? Shui Lei raised his head when he heard the voice. His eyes lit up when he saw Luo Nan. Nanster, are you okay? Just now. Sigh. Shui Lei didn't know where to begin with a multitude of things. In the end, he could only wave his hand, unable to continue. What happened? He Yuan asked the bodyguard in charge of taking care of the patients. The bodyguard had a bitter smile on his face as he explained the situation that had occurred. Of the 3 patients, Shui Lei had only been knocked unconscious by He Yuan. He didn't have any injuries, so he woke up the earliest. He was easy to talk to and was easily pacified. Then he went to take care of his unconscious girlfriend until the doctor He Yuan invited arrived. Black Wolf's spine was fractured, so he was carried away for surgery early on. Chen Xiaolin was treated on the spot. Chen Xiaolin was fine when she didn't wake up, but when she woke up and saw Shui Lei, her emotions were agitated. She was afraid. She was angry. She was sad. She chased Shui Lei out of the room. She even alarmed the waiters on the floor. She lost control of her emotions? Luo Nan immediately thought of the human-faced arachnid. Clearly, He Wayne was thinking the same thing. The two looked at each other and headed into the room. He Wayne blocked him, and Zhang Yingying took his place. The smile on this girl's face was much fainter. Her body had a clear and sharp aura. She was clearly ready to go. But after entering the room, Luo Nan's eyes were filled with nothing abnormal. Chun Xiaolin was in deep sleep on the bed. Aside from being weak, there were no traces of the human-faced arachnid. The three people exchanged glances. They were all a bit stunned. The doctor was very dissatisfied with the three people who suddenly squeezed in. The patient has just been injected with a tranquilizer. She needs to rest. All unrelated people leave. He Wayne confirmed with Luo Nan that the human-faced arachnid really didn't exist. Then she indicated to Luo Nan and Zhang Yingying to leave first. She stayed behind to talk with the doctor. He Wayne walked out of the room after a few minutes. Luo Nan asked her, "What's going on?" Symptoms of stress. It's hard to understand facts that surpass one's common sense. Refusal to come into contact with facts, severe rejection, or selective forgetfulness. The members of the society often encounter these kinds of things. Zhang Yingying shrugged. I've long since suggested that the scope of common sense of ordinary people should be expanded in time, to let them get used to accepting the existence of ability users. Humph humph. Mutants, those unscientific things, have been wreaking havoc for decades. Many people are still burying their heads in the sand. Luo Nan understood. So it turned out that Chun Xiaolin was unable to accept the sudden life and death battle between Shui Lei and the Black Wolf. Then there was the human-faced arachnid, and even the influence of Luo Nan's hypnosis technique. He Wayne suggested, "It's better to let your friend go home first. He'll only make the patient more nervous if he stays by her side." Zhang Yingying shot a glance at the still dejected Shui Lei. "This friend of yours is quite the material. His foundation is much better than yours. His adaptability is also quite strong. He should be the disciple of some martial arts master." Luo Nan approved of this conjecture. Shui Lei's reaction in the elevator was truly admirable. He even suspected that this big guy should have an intuitionistic response to the threat of the human-faced arachnid. However, Zhang Yingying was serious for less than 10 seconds before she began to run her mouth again. "This pair is clearly bragging. Why don't I introduce your friend to the society? You can go to the society and find your own kind. This kind of sunny and strong man is definitely more popular than some toothpick guy." Luo Nan glared at her and asked He Wayne about Chun Xiaolin's treatment situation. Then he walked towards Shui Lei. "Senior Sister Chun doesn't have any problems. The doctor will take good care of her. We can't help much here anyway. Let's go home first."